My daughter's husband thought I was just an old fool who didn't understand anything. He used to sneak into my room when he thought I was asleep, rummaging through my things, looking for something valuable. But that night, when he opened my drawer to get the keys to the safe, his face first turned white as chalk and then yellow, like egg yolk. What he saw there changed his life forever. And me, I just smiled in the darkness. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The fork froze halfway to my mouth when Charlie's voice cut through our peaceful dinner conversation. So, David, that safe upstairs, what kind of lock does it have? Lauren nearly choked on her water. Charlie, what kind of question is that? But Charlie's eyes stayed fixed on mine, waiting. There was something predatory in his expression that made my chest tighten. I set down my fork carefully, buying time. Just curious about home security, he continued, that practiced smile spreading across his face. You know, with all the break-ins in the area lately. What break-ins? I asked. I'd lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. The most excitement we'd had was Mrs. Henderson's cat getting stuck in a tree last month. Charlie waved his hand dismissively. Oh, you probably don't hear about them. Police keep it quiet to avoid panic. He leaned forward, elbows on my dining table. But a man your age, living alone in a house this size, you must have some serious security measures. Lauren shifted uncomfortably. Dad's always been careful about locking up. Right, but what about insurance? Charlie's voice grew more insistent. I mean, if something happened to you, God forbid, Lauren would need to know where everything important is kept, wouldn't she? The room felt smaller suddenly. I watched Charlie's face, noting how his pupils dilated slightly when he mentioned my hypothetical demise, how his fingers drummed against the table when I didn't immediately respond. I have everything organized, I said finally. Lauren knows what she needs to know. But does she know about the key? The question hung in the air like smoke. Lauren looked between us, confusion creasing her brow. What key? She asked. Charlie's smile widened. The one in your dad's bedroom drawer. The one that... How do you know about any key in my bedroom? The words came out sharper than I intended. For just a moment, Charlie's mask slipped. I saw something cold and calculating flash across his features before the concerned son-in-law expression returned. I was looking for aspirin last week when my head was killing me, he said smoothly. Lauren told me to check your bathroom cabinet, but I accidentally opened the wrong drawer first. Sorry, didn't mean to invade your privacy. Lauren nodded quickly. I remember that headache. You were really suffering. But I remembered that day too. Charlie had been upstairs for nearly 30 minutes, claiming stomach troubles after dinner, long enough to do more than search randomly for aspirin. The aspirin's in the medicine cabinet, I said quietly. Always has been. Charlie's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Must have been really out of it from the pain. The conversation limped along after that, but Charlie kept circling back. Questions about my bank, about who else had keys to the house, about my daily routines. Each query felt like fingers probing a wound, testing for weakness. When dinner finally ended, Lauren jumped up to clear the dishes. I'll handle cleanup tonight, Dad. You cooked? I don't mind, I said, already stacking plates. It was my routine, my way of processing the day's events. Tonight, I especially needed the familiar rhythm of washing and drying. Come on, honey, Charlie said to Lauren, his hand already on her shoulder. Let your dad handle his kitchen. We should get some rest. They disappeared upstairs, and I heard their bedroom door close. But as I scrubbed the dinner plates, I kept replaying Charlie's questions. The way he'd known about a key he shouldn't have known existed. The casual mention of my death and Lauren's inheritance. My hands moved automatically. Wash, rinse, dry, while my mind cataloged every red flag I'd ignored over the past 3 weeks. Charlie's unemployment story that never quite added up. His constant interest in my financial situation. The way he studied my house like he was memorizing blueprints. I finished the last glass and hung the dish towel on its hook. The kitchen gleamed under the overhead lights, restored to perfect order. But something fundamental had shifted tonight. The house felt different now, not safer, but exposed. Upstairs, I could hear muffled voices through the walls, then silence. Time to see what other surprises waited for me in my own home. The first thing I noticed climbing the stairs was my bedroom door. It stood slightly ajar, maybe 2 inches of darkness visible through the gap. I stopped on the top step, my hand gripping the banister. That door had been closed when I went down for dinner. I always closed it, a habit from 40 years of living alone, broken only recently by my daughter's presence in the house. But Lauren and Charlie were staying in the guest room down the hall. There was no reason for anyone to be in my bedroom. I stood there for 30 seconds, listening. No sound came from the guest room, no movement anywhere upstairs, just the familiar settling noises of an old house, and my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. I pushed the door open slowly, waiting for it to creak. It didn't. The hinges were well oiled, silent, but stepping into my private space felt like walking into a crime scene. Everything looked normal at first glance. The bed was still made, corners tight and perfect. My reading glasses sat on the nightstand where I'd left them. The lamp stood at the same angle. But my eyes, trained by decades of methodical living, caught the discrepancies immediately. The closet door hung open exactly 4 inches. I always closed it completely. The slight gap would have bothered me all night. My dresser drawers weren't quite flush anymore. The second drawer from the top, where I kept important papers, had been pushed in carelessly. A corner of manila folder peeked out like a yellow tongue. My stomach clenched. I moved to the dresser, pulling out the drawer fully. The folders inside had been rifled through, returned in approximately the right order, but not exactly. Someone had been thorough, but not careful enough. Insurance papers were mixed with bank statements. My will, normally kept in the back folder, had migrated toward the front, and the small brass key I kept taped under the drawer's lip was gone. I checked twice, running my fingers along the wooden surface where the tape had been. Nothing. The key that opened my safe, the safe Charlie had asked about so casually at dinner, had been discovered and taken. My hands started shaking, not from fear but from rage. This wasn't random. This wasn't opportunistic. Someone had entered my private sanctuary and systematically violated it, searching for specific items. Someone who knew exactly what to look for and where to find it. I moved to the safe, a small but sturdy model, bolted inside my walk-in closet. The digital lock still worked, but that didn't matter anymore. Charlie had the key to the manual override. Standing in my closet, surrounded by decades of accumulated possessions, I felt utterly exposed. How long had he been planning this? How many times had he been in here while Lauren and I were downstairs, cataloging my belongings like items in a store? The violation went deeper than theft. This was personal, intimate. Someone had touched my private papers, had seen my financial records, had handled things meant for no one but me. The careful boundaries I'd built around my life had been crossed with surgical precision. But Charlie had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed I wouldn't notice, that I was just another oblivious old man, too trusting and too tired to pay attention to details. He was wrong. I closed the dresser drawer carefully, leaving everything exactly as I'd found it. If Charlie thought he was operating in secret, I needed him to keep believing that. Let him think his intrusion had gone undetected. Let him proceed with whatever plan he was hatching. Because now I knew what I was dealing with. This wasn't about unemployment or temporary financial hardship. This was about theft. Premeditated, calculated theft by someone who'd spent weeks studying my routines and vulnerabilities. Someone who was sleeping down the hall with my daughter. I turned off the bedroom light and began getting ready for bed, moving through my normal nighttime routine. But every action felt different now, performed for an invisible audience. Was Charlie listening? Did he know I'd discovered his search? As I pulled back the covers, one thought crystallized in my mind. Tomorrow, I would start gathering evidence. Tonight, I would lie awake and plan. But first, I needed to know exactly what I was up against. Sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind cycling through the evening's revelations. Every small sound made me tense. The house settling, wind through the trees outside, the faint hum of the refrigerator 2 floors below. At 11:47 p.m., according to my bedside clock, I heard movement downstairs. Soft footsteps crossed the living room floor. Not Lauren's light step, something heavier, more deliberate. Charlie. I remained perfectly still, controlling my breathing, listening as the sounds moved toward the front of the house. Then, barely audible through the old house's thin floors, I heard his voice. Yeah, it's me. Everyone's asleep. A phone call. Charlie was making a phone call at midnight, speaking in whispers he thought no one could hear. I eased myself up in bed, careful not to let the mattress creak. The hardwood floor was cold against my bare feet as I moved closer to the heating vent that connected my bedroom to the living room below. Sometimes sound traveled through the old ductwork in unexpected ways. The old man's definitely loaded. Charlie's voice drifted up, clearer now. I found bank statements, investment portfolios, the whole thing. We're talking serious money here. My blood went cold. We're talking. He wasn't working alone. Tomorrow night, Charlie continued, Lauren's going to her book club meeting. She goes every Tuesday, 7 to 9. Gives us perfect timing. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, hands trembling as I opened the voice recording app. Whatever came next, I needed evidence. I already have the safe key, Charlie was saying. Grabbed it earlier today while they were having dinner. The old fool keeps everything important in there. Cash, jewelry, probably more bank information. The bastard. I pressed record just as his voice became more animated, more confident. Look, I know you're worried about the timeline, but my gambling debts aren't going away. Those guys aren't exactly patient, if you know what I mean. This has to happen now. Gambling debts. That explained everything. The desperation, the calculated approach, the willingness to betray my daughter's trust. Charlie wasn't just an opportunistic thief. He was a desperate man, backed into a corner by his own stupidity. David's just some lonely old widower. Charlie's voice carried a sneer now. Probably grateful for the company. He has no idea what's coming. Hell, he was asking me about home security at dinner tonight. Practically handed me the information I needed. Rage built in my chest, hot and consuming. The casual dismissal in his voice. The way he reduced me to a stereotype. A easy mark. But I forced myself to stay quiet. To keep recording. The beauty is he'll never suspect family. Even if he figures out something's missing, Lauren will convince him he just misplaced stuff. You know how old people get about their memory? Old people. I was 66, not 96. My memory was sharp enough to remember every word of this conversation. Trust me, by Thursday we'll be clear. I'll tell Lauren we got a job offer in another state. Something urgent. We'll be gone before the old man knows what hit him. Charlie was silent for a moment, listening to whoever was on the other end. Then he laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. Yeah, well, maybe he should have been more careful about who he let into his house. Life lesson, right? The call ended. I heard Charlie moving around downstairs for another minute, probably checking locks or windows. Then his footsteps on the stairs, careful and quiet. I quickly stopped the recording and slipped my phone under my pillow. The bedroom door was still slightly ajar from his earlier search. I hadn't dared fix it and reveal that I'd noticed. Through the gap, I watched his shadow pass in the hallway. The guest room door opened and closed softly. For a long time after that, I lay in the darkness, processing what I'd learned. Charlie had gambling debts serious enough to involve dangerous people. He had an accomplice. He planned to rob me tomorrow night during Lauren's book club meeting, and he intended to disappear immediately afterward, taking my daughter with him into whatever mess he'd created. The violation of my bedroom suddenly seemed small compared to this larger betrayal. Charlie wasn't just stealing from me. He was using Lauren as cover, manipulating her love and trust to set up his crime. But he'd made a critical error. He'd assumed I was helpless, clueless, just another easy target. He had no idea that I'd spent 30 years as an insurance investigator before retirement, or that I'd dealt with plenty of desperate people trying to outsmart the system. Charlie wanted to play games with an old man? Fine. Let's see how smart he really was. Lying there in the dark, with Charlie's recorded confession on my phone, I found myself thinking back to how this all started. 3 weeks ago, when Lauren's desperate call had shattered my quiet Tuesday morning. I'd been reading the newspaper, coffee growing cold beside me, when my phone rang. Lauren's name on the screen always made me smile, but her voice that day was different, strained, frightened. Dad, I know it's early, but... She'd paused, and I could hear her struggling not to cry. Charlie lost his job last month. We've been trying to manage, but we're behind on the mortgage, and... How far behind? I'd asked immediately, already reaching for my checkbook. 3 months? Dad, I hate to ask, but could we maybe stay with you for a while? Just until Charlie finds something new? The relief in her voice when I said yes had been heartbreaking. My little girl, 32 years old, and too proud to ask for help until she had no choice. Of course she could come home. Of course I'd help. But even then, something had nagged at me about Charlie's situation. He'd worked for the same company for 8 years, Lauren had said. Good employee reviews. The layoffs had been sudden, unexpected. Yet when I'd asked Lauren for details, her answers were vague. Charlie handled the finances, she explained. He was managing the job search. She trusted him to figure it out. I should have pressed harder, should have asked more questions. 3 days later, they'd arrived with a U-Haul truck and too many boxes for a temporary stay. Lauren had hugged me tight on the doorstep, tears in her eyes, whispering thank you over and over. But Charlie had been different, cooler, his handshake firm but brief, his eyes already scanning my house with an intensity that should have alarmed me. Nice place, David, he'd said, walking through my living room like he was appraising it. Must be worth quite a bit in today's market. At the time, I'd chalked it up to natural curiosity. Now I realized he'd been calculating, evaluating, planning. During their first week, I'd tried to make them comfortable, cleared space in the guest closet, adjusted my routines to accommodate 3 people instead of 1. Lauren had settled in easily. She knew the house, knew my habits. But Charlie had asked endless questions about my neighborhood watch schedule, about which neighbors were home during the day, about my banking habits, my shopping routines, whether I kept cash in the house. All perfectly innocent questions from someone trying to adjust to a new living situation. Except they weren't innocent at all. I remembered the morning he'd offered to drive me to the bank. Save you a trip? He'd said. I need to update my address with unemployment anyway. But at the bank he'd lingered near the teller window, watching as I made my deposit. Asked casual questions about my account types, my safety deposit box, red flags I'd ignored because I wanted to trust my daughter's husband, because Lauren loved him, and I loved Lauren. The gambling should have been obvious, too. Charlie's phone rang constantly, calls he always took in private, stepping outside or into another room. He'd claimed it was potential employers, networking contacts, but I'd noticed how his mood shifted after these calls, the tension in his shoulders, the way he'd pace afterward. In the mail, financial statements addressed to Charlie had been arriving at my house for 2 weeks. Credit card companies, collection agencies. I'd assumed they were just updating his address after his job loss. Now I understood they were dunning notices, final demands, threats. Lauren knew none of this. She trusted Charlie completely, took his explanations at face value. When he said he was handling their finances, she believed him. When he said the job market was tough, but he had prospects, she supported him. She had no idea her husband was drowning in gambling debt, had no clue that her childhood home was being surveilled like a target. My trusting, loving daughter was being used as the perfect cover for theft. The thought brought me back to the present moment, to my dark bedroom and the weight of Charlie's recorded confession on my phone. In 12 hours, he planned to rob me. In 36 hours, he planned to disappear with Lauren, dragging her into his web of debt and deception. But he'd made one catastrophic miscalculation. He'd assumed I was just a lonely old man, grateful for company and easy to fool. I wasn't lonely. I was careful. I was observant. And I had 30 years of experience dealing with people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. Charlie wanted to steal from me tomorrow night? Fine. Let him try. But he was about to learn that some old men bite back. I woke at 6:30, same as always. The recording on my phone felt like evidence of a nightmare, but the timestamp proved otherwise. 12:47 a.m., Charlie's voice clear as daylight, planning to rob me tonight. Downstairs, I started the coffee maker and began my usual breakfast routine. Eggs, toast, orange juice, everything precisely as it had been for the past 3 weeks. When Lauren appeared in her robe, yawning and grateful, I smiled warmly. Morning, sweetheart. Sleep well? Like a baby. Thank you again for letting us stay here, Dad. Charlie appeared 20 minutes later, hair still damp from the shower. He looked rested, confident, a man with a plan. Beautiful morning, he said, settling into his chair. What's everyone got planned for today? I set his coffee down carefully. Oh, the usual. Might run some errands later. Charlie's eyes sharpened slightly. What kind of errands? Just odds and ends. Hardware store, maybe the bank. I watched his reaction. A tiny muscle twitched near his left eye. Nothing exciting? The bank? Charlie leaned forward. Everything okay financially? Lauren laughed. Dad's always been paranoid about checking his accounts in person. Old habits. Not paranoid, I corrected mildly. Careful. You can't be too careful these days. Charlie nodded too enthusiastically. Absolutely right. Identity theft, online scams. It's a jungle out there for someone your age. Someone my age. There it was again, that casual dismissal, wrapped in false concern. Speaking of careful, Charlie continued, I've been thinking about your home security. This neighborhood seems pretty quiet, but you never know. It's perfectly safe, Lauren interjected. Dad's lived here 15 years without problems. But Charlie wasn't listening to his wife. His attention stayed locked on me. Still, a man living alone. Valuable things in the house? It pays to be prepared. You mentioned that safe upstairs. Is that where you keep important documents? I took a slow sip of coffee, considering my response. Some things, yes. What about cash? I mean, if the banks went down or something happened, it's smart to have emergency funds readily available. The audacity was breathtaking. He was sitting at my breakfast table, eating food I'd prepared, asking me to inventory my assets for his convenience. I have what I need, I said simply. Charlie tried a different approach. You mentioned being a heavy sleeper last week. That's good. I worry about older folks who can't get proper rest. I hadn't mentioned any such thing, but I nodded anyway. Oh yes, once I'm out, I'm dead to the world, especially lately. I've been so tired in the evenings. That's normal at your age, Charlie said. Your body needs more rest. Lauren shot him a look. Charlie, that's rude. No, he's right, I said quickly. I usually take something to help me sleep. Knock me right out until morning. Charlie's posture relaxed noticeably. Perfect. Let him think I'd be unconscious and helpless tonight. Well, I should let you folks plan your day, I said, standing to clear the dishes. I'll probably turn in early tonight. All this family activity has me more tired than usual. That sounds perfect, Dad, Lauren said. You deserve rest. Charlie helped carry plates to the kitchen, and I caught him glancing toward the stairs, toward my bedroom, calculating, planning. You know, he said casually, I might stay up late tonight, watch some TV in the living room. I'm a bit of a night owl. Of course he was. I smiled and nodded. Make yourself comfortable. The remote's on the coffee table. After breakfast, Charlie announced he needed to make some calls about job prospects. Lauren decided to organize their belongings in the guest room. I had my window. I think I'll run those errands now, I told them. You two enjoy some quiet time together. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Charlie watching from the upstairs window. Not the guest room window, my bedroom window. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Tonight couldn't come soon enough. The hardware store was my first stop. I needed supplies, but more importantly, I needed to think through every detail of what was coming. Charlie had made his intentions crystal clear at breakfast. Tonight, while I supposedly slept deeply with the help of medication, he planned to enter my bedroom, locate the key he'd spotted weeks ago, and open my safe. Simple. Clean. The perfect crime against a trusting old man. Except the key wasn't there anymore. I'd moved it at 5 this morning after lying awake since Charlie's phone call. The small brass key now sat safely in my kitchen junk drawer, buried beneath rubber bands and twist ties. Charlie could search my bedroom dresser until his fingers bled. He'd find nothing. But that wasn't enough. I wanted him caught red-handed, humiliated, exposed for exactly what he was. I wanted evidence so clear that even Lauren couldn't deny her husband's true nature. In the hardware store's party supply aisle, I found what I needed. A small confetti cannon, the kind used for gender reveal parties. Spring-loaded, designed to create maximum mess with minimum effort. Perfect. I also picked up a bag of ultrafine glitter, the kind that sticks to everything and never quite comes off. Silver and gold, because if Charlie wanted to be a thief, he should look the part. Back home, I found the house empty. A note from Lauren on the kitchen counter. Gone grocery shopping with Charlie. Back by 2 p.m. Love you. Perfect timing. I had 3 hours. In my basement workshop, I carefully dismantled the confetti cannon. The mechanism was beautifully simple, a spring-loaded plunger that would trigger when sufficient pressure was applied. I replaced the harmless paper confetti with my glitter mixture, adding just enough to coat someone thoroughly without causing injury. The tricky part was calibration. I needed the device to trigger when Charlie opened my dresser drawer and reached inside, but not from casual contact. After several tests with a wooden spoon, I found the right sensitivity. Installation required precision. I placed the modified cannon inside my dresser drawer, positioning it so the trigger would activate when someone reached toward the back, exactly where the key had been hidden. To anyone glancing inside, it would look like normal drawer contents. A few old photos, some buttons, miscellaneous items. But reach in with purpose, search with intent, and surprise. I tested the setup 3 times, using a ruler to simulate Charlie's searching motion. Each test triggered perfectly, sending a cloud of glitter exactly where an intruder's face and hands would be. The device reset easily, ready for its real performance. Next came the key placement deception. I positioned a dummy key in plain sight near the front of the drawer, an old luggage key that looked similar enough to fool someone in a hurry. Charlie would spot it immediately, reach for it confidently, and trigger my surprise. The beauty was in the psychology. Charlie expected stealth, silence, success. He'd budgeted for a quick, quiet theft. He hadn't planned for a glitter explosion that would mark him as clearly as a die pack marks bank robbers. By 1:45 p.m., everything was in place. The drawer looked innocent and normal. The trap was armed and ready. Charlie would walk into my bedroom tonight, expecting to find a helpless victim. Instead, he'd find 24-karat justice. I heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Lauren and Charlie returning from their shopping trip, probably feeling domestic and normal. Charlie had no idea his crime scene had become a trap. I closed the dresser drawer gently and headed downstairs to greet them, wearing my best grandfatherly smile. Tonight was going to be very interesting. I need to run out for a quick errand, I announced after lunch. Won't be long. Lauren looked up from unpacking groceries. Need help with anything, Dad? Just picking up something at the electronics store. You two relax. You've done enough shopping for one day. Charlie barely glanced up from his phone, but I caught the flicker of interest in his eyes. The old man running errands alone, leaving the house unguarded, probably confirming his mental map of my routine. The Best Buy clerk was a helpful young man named Marcus, who didn't blink when I explained I wanted a security camera for my bedroom. "A lot of break-ins in your area?" he asked. "Something like that. I need something small, with good night vision, and it needs to be wireless." Marcus showed me several options. I settled on a compact model that connected to my smartphone, with motion detection and 8 hours of battery life. The camera was smaller than a deck of cards and came with magnetic mounting options. "You'll want to test the placement," Marcus advised. "The app lets you see exactly what the camera sees in real time." Perfect. I paid cash and drove home, the camera sitting in its box beside me like a secret weapon. Back home, I found Charlie and Lauren watching television in the living room. They looked comfortable, domestic, like a normal couple staying with Lauren's father, not thieves preparing for a heist. "Just going to rest for a few minutes," I told them, heading upstairs. "All this running around has me beat." In my bedroom, I closed the door and got to work. The camera needed to capture Charlie's approach to the dresser, his reaction to opening the drawer, and the glitter explosion that would follow. But it also needed to remain completely hidden. I tested several positions using the smartphone app. On top of my bookshelf, the angle was wrong. Behind my lamp, too obvious. Finally, I found the perfect spot, nestled between books on my nightstand, angled to capture both the dresser and the center of the room. The magnetic mount held perfectly, and the camera's black casing blended with the book spines. Unless someone was specifically looking for surveillance equipment, it was invisible. I spent 20 minutes adjusting the angle through the app, ensuring optimal coverage. The motion detection was sensitive enough to activate when someone entered the room, but not so sensitive that normal settling or outside noise would trigger false recordings. Battery life was crucial. The camera needed to last from now until Charlie made his move, potentially 8 to 10 hours. I switched it to motion-activated mode to conserve power, then tested the night vision capability by turning off the lights. The infrared image was crystal clear. Charlie's face would be perfectly visible when he triggered my trap. I also tested the recording function, making sure the audio was clear enough to capture any words Charlie might speak during his crime. If he said anything incriminating, and desperate people often talk to themselves, I'd have that evidence too. The setup was elegant in its simplicity. Charlie would enter my room expecting darkness and silence. Instead, he'd be filmed from the moment he crossed the threshold. The camera would capture his search, his discovery of the dummy key, his reaching into the drawer, and the spectacular glitter explosion that followed. Visual evidence, audio evidence, and physical evidence, all in one beautiful package. I repositioned a few books to better camouflage the camera, then stood back to admire my work. Everything looked normal, innocent, just an old man's bedroom, ready for a peaceful night's sleep. Downstairs, I could hear Lauren and Charlie talking quietly, planning their evening, no doubt. Charlie was probably calculating the hours until his theft window opened. He had no idea the window had become a trapdoor. I checked my phone one final time. The camera feed was clear, the recording function active, the battery showing full charge. Everything was ready. Tonight, Charlie would finally show his true colors, and thanks to modern technology, every moment would be preserved in high-definition detail. Let the games begin. Dinner passed peacefully, with Lauren chatting about neighborhood changes and Charlie checking his phone frequently. I played my part perfectly, the tired grandfather, ready for an early bedtime after a busy day. By 8 o'clock, we'd settled in the living room. Lauren curled up with a book while I claimed my usual armchair, making a show of rubbing my temples. "Long day," I murmured. "Think I'll turn in early tonight." Charlie looked up from his phone immediately. "Actually, David, I was hoping we could share a drink first. You know, father and son-in-law bonding time." The suggestion came out of nowhere, but his tone was carefully casual. Too casual. "That's sweet," Lauren said, not looking up from her book. "You two should spend more time together." "I was thinking about that bottle of Macallan I saw in your kitchen," Charlie continued. "Premium stuff, perfect for a nightcap." I kept my expression neutral, but internally I was fascinated. Charlie had been planning this conversation probably since breakfast. The timing, the suggestion, the specific mention of expensive whiskey. Nothing was accidental. "I appreciate the thought," I said, "but I'm on medication that doesn't mix well with alcohol." Charlie's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Come on, one small glass won't hurt. We're practically family." "Really, I should avoid it entirely." "Dad's right," Lauren chimed in. "The doctor was very specific about his blood pressure medication." But Charlie wasn't giving up easily. "What about just a toast, then? A tiny sip to celebrate." He paused, searching for something to celebrate. "To family." The persistence was telling. A normal person would have accepted my first refusal graciously. Charlie was pushing because he needed me to drink something specific, something that would ensure I slept deeply tonight. "I tell you what," he said, standing up. "I'll pour myself a glass, and we can just sit and talk. No pressure for you to drink." He disappeared into the kitchen before I could object. I heard cabinet doors opening, the clink of glass. When he returned, he carried 2 tumblers, one with amber liquid, one empty. "Changed my mind," he said, settling back onto the couch. "Poured you just a splash. For the toast. Barely a teaspoon." He held out the second glass. The whiskey inside caught the lamplight, looking innocent enough. But I'd investigated insurance fraud for 30 years, and desperate people always got sloppy. "Charlie, I really can't." "One tiny sip," he insisted. "Lauren, tell your father one sip won't kill him." Lauren looked between us, sensing tension she couldn't identify. "If Dad says no, maybe you should respect that." Charlie's jaw tightened. For just a moment, his mask slipped completely. I saw frustration, calculation, and something close to panic flicker across his features. "You know what?" I said, standing carefully. "I'm more tired than I thought. I think I'll take one of those sleeping pills and call it a night." Charlie's posture changed immediately. "Sleeping pills? Doctor prescribed them last month. Powerful stuff. Knocks me out completely. I'll be dead to the world until morning." Relief flooded Charlie's face. "That sounds perfect. You need your rest." "Sweet dreams, Dad," Lauren said, kissing my cheek. "See you in the morning." I made a production of climbing the stairs slowly, pausing to grip the railing like an old man struggling with fatigue. At the top, I turned back. Don't stay up too late, you two. Charlie, help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Thanks, David. Sleep well. In my bedroom, I went through the motions of preparing for sleep, changing clothes, brushing teeth, turning down the bed. But I also double-checked my camera positioning and confirmed the glitter trap was ready. I turned off my bedroom light and settled onto the bed fully clothed, positioning myself where I could see the hallway through my slightly open door. Downstairs, I could hear the television playing softly, Charlie and Lauren talking in hushed voices. Then Lauren's footsteps on the stairs, the guest room door closing. Charlie stayed downstairs, waiting, probably watching the clock, calculating how long it would take for my sleeping pill to take full effect. I checked my phone. 9:47 p.m. The camera showed my empty bedroom in perfect night vision detail. The trap was set. The stage was prepared. All I had to do now was wait for my son-in-law to reveal his true nature. At 2:43 a.m., I heard the first creak on the stairs. I'd been lying motionless for hours, positioned so I could see the hallway through my barely opened door. My phone showed the camera feed in real time. My empty bedroom waiting in perfect night vision clarity. Charlie moved like a professional burglar, avoiding the spots on the stairs that groaned under weight. He'd learned my house's quirks during his 3-week residency, mapping every sound that might betray his presence. The hallway floorboard outside my room whispered under his weight. Then silence. He was listening, making sure his sleeping pill story had worked its magic. I controlled my breathing, keeping it deep and regular. The performance of my life, with my daughter's future hanging in the balance. My door handle turned with glacial slowness. Charlie's silhouette appeared in the doorway, backlit by the faint hallway nightlight. He stood frozen for 30 seconds, watching my supposedly unconscious form. Satisfied I was deeply sedated, he slipped inside. Charlie moved with predatory confidence now, believing himself invisible and untouchable. His dark clothing made him nearly invisible, but I could track his movement by sound and the shifting shadows. He approached my dresser with the certainty of a man who'd planned every step. 3 weeks of reconnaissance had taught him exactly where to find what he needed. The key that would unlock my safe, my security, my life savings. I watched him position himself directly in front of the dresser. His hands reached for the second drawer, the one containing my hidden key and his spectacular surprise. The drawer slid open smoothly. For a split second, Charlie's posture radiated triumph. He'd found his target, reached inside confidently, fingers seeking the brass key that would solve all his problems. Then my confetti bomb exploded. Boom! The sound was magnificent, like a party favor crossed with a small cannon. Silver and gold glitter erupted in a glorious cloud, coating Charlie from head to toe in sparkling confetti. The explosion echoed through the house like celebratory gunfire. Charlie stumbled backward, cursing violently as glitter settled in his hair, on his clothes, across his shocked face. He looked like he'd been attacked by a craft store explosion, transformed into a walking disco ball. "What the hell?" he gasped, brushing frantically at the glitter that clung to everything. I performed my awakening with Academy Award precision, sitting up with startled confusion. "What on earth?" I called out, reaching for my bedside lamp. "What was that noise?" Light flooded the room, revealing Charlie in all his glittering glory. He stood frozen beside my dresser, covered head to toe in festive confetti, holding the dummy key I'd placed as bait. "Charlie?" I blinked with theatrical bewilderment. "What are you doing in my bedroom?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Glitter fell from his hair like holiday snow. I heard a noise," he stammered. "Thought someone might be breaking in." "Breaking in?" I glanced around my room with apparent confusion. "And you ended up sparkling?" Charlie looked down at himself, finally grasping the full extent of his transformation. He resembled a rejected Christmas ornament, silver and gold glitter clinging to every surface of his body. There was some kind of trap, he said weakly. "Trap?" I tilted my head innocently. "In my bedroom?" From down the hall came the sound of feet hitting the floor. Lauren, awakened by the explosion, was coming to investigate. Charlie's eyes widened with panic. "How do you explain being covered in craft supplies while robbing your father-in-law at 3 a.m.? "David, what's happening?" Lauren's voice carried worry and growing alertness. Charlie opened his mouth desperately, but no believable explanation emerged. He was caught, literally red-handed, or rather glitter-handed, in the act of betraying our family. I allowed myself the smallest smile as footsteps approached down the hallway. Justice, it turned out, was beautifully sparkly. "Dad? Are you okay?" Lauren appeared in the doorway, tying her robe belt with quick, worried movements. Then she stopped dead, taking in the scene before her. Me sitting up in bed, apparently confused and concerned. Charlie standing beside my open dresser drawer, covered from head to toe in glittering confetti, like he'd been dipped in a craft store. "What in the world?" Lauren's voice caught. "Charlie? Why do you look like a Christmas decoration?" Charlie's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Glitter drifted from his hair with each movement, settling on my bedroom carpet like festive snow. "There was a noise," he said finally, his voice strained. "I came to check on your father." "At 3 in the morning?" Lauren's tone sharpened. "And you ended up covered in... what is that, glitter?" "Some kind of security device," Charlie said quickly, brushing frantically at his sparkling clothes. "It went off when I opened the drawer." Lauren's eyes moved from Charlie to the open dresser drawer, then to me. "Dad, do you have security devices in your furniture?" I maintained my expression of elderly confusion. "Not that I know of, sweetheart. I was sound asleep until that explosion woke me up." "Then why were you in his dresser drawer, Charlie?" Lauren's voice carried a new edge I'd never heard before. Protective. Suspicious. Charlie's story began crumbling in real time. "I was looking for something to help you sleep. You were tossing and turning, and I thought David might have some extra sleep aids." "Sleep aids?" Lauren's eyebrows lifted. "In his bedroom dresser?" "I thought... maybe..." Charlie gestured weakly at the drawer, sending more glitter cascading to the floor. "Charlie," I said gently, "my medications are in the bathroom cabinet. They always have been." The silence that followed felt heavy with implications. Lauren looked between us, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder. "So let me understand this," she said slowly. "You left our bed at 3 in the morning, came into my father's bedroom while he was sleeping, and opened his private dresser drawer, looking for medicine you knew wasn't there?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Lauren's voice rose slightly, because from where I'm standing it looks like my husband was going through my father's personal belongings in the middle of the night. Charlie's desperation grew more visible. "Lauren, you have to understand. I was just trying to help." "Help with what, exactly?" I interjected mildly. "What were you hoping to find in that drawer?" Charlie's eyes darted between us. The question hung in the air like an accusation. He swallowed hard. "I was confused, disoriented. I thought I heard someone breaking in." "Breaking in?" Lauren repeated flatly. "So you decided to search my father's bedroom furniture?" "I wasn't searching." "Then what do you call opening his dresser drawer?" Charlie's glitter-covered hands clenched into fists. "Why are you interrogating me like this? I'm your husband." The defensive anger in his voice seemed to hit Lauren like a physical blow. She took a step back, and I saw something change in her expression, the last traces of trust beginning to crumble. "You're right," she said quietly. "You are my husband, which is why I'm asking you to explain why you're standing in my father's bedroom at 3 in the morning, covered in craft supplies, with your hand in his private drawer." Charlie looked trapped, cornered by the weight of his own implausible explanations. Glitter continued to fall from his clothes like evidence of his guilt. "I can explain everything," he said desperately. "Then please do." Lauren crossed her arms. "Because right now I'm very confused about what my husband was doing in here." I watched my daughter's face and saw the exact moment her protective instincts shifted from Charlie to me. The moment she began to see the situation not as a misunderstanding, but as a threat to her father. Charlie must have seen it too, because his next words came out edged with panic. "Lauren, you have to trust me." But trust, once broken by glitter and lies, isn't easily repaired. Lauren's eyes stayed fixed on Charlie, and I could see her mental wheels turning, processing, analyzing, drawing conclusions that her heart didn't want to accept. "Charlie," she said slowly, "I need you to tell me the truth. Right now. What were you really doing in my father's bedroom?" Charlie opened his mouth, but I knew the moment had come. My daughter deserved better than watching her husband spin more lies. She deserved the truth, no matter how much it would hurt. "Lauren," I said gently, reaching for my phone on the nightstand, "there's something you need to hear." Charlie's face went white beneath the glitter. "David, don't." "Don't what?" Lauren's voice sharpened dangerously. "Don't what, Charlie?" I found the recording from 2 nights ago and held up my phone. "Sweetheart, I recorded something last night. A phone conversation. I think you should listen to it." "No," Charlie said quickly. "Lauren, whatever he thinks he heard—" "Be quiet," Lauren snapped, never taking her eyes off me. "Dad, play it." I pressed play. Charlie's voice filled the room, clear and damning. "Yeah, it's me. Everyone's asleep. The old man's definitely loaded. I found bank statements, investment portfolios, the whole thing. We're talking serious money here." Lauren's face went completely still. Her eyes widened as she listened to her husband's voice discussing my finances with a stranger. "Tomorrow night, Lauren's going to her book club meeting. She goes every Tuesday, 7 to 9. Gives us perfect timing." "Stop it," Charlie said desperately. "Lauren, I can explain." "Shut up." Lauren's voice was deadly quiet. "Just shut up and let me listen." Charlie's voice continued from the phone. "I already have the safe key. Grabbed it earlier today while they were having dinner. The old fool keeps everything important in there. Cash, jewelry, probably more bank information." Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. She stared at Charlie like she was seeing a stranger. "Look, I know you're worried about the timeline, but my gambling debts aren't going away. Those guys aren't exactly patient, if you know what I mean." "Gambling debts," Lauren whispered. "What gambling debts?" The recording continued. "David's just some lonely old widower. Probably grateful for the company. He has no idea what's coming." I watched my daughter's face crumble as she heard her husband's casual dismissal of me, his assessment of my vulnerability, his cold calculation of how to exploit my kindness. The beauty is, he'll never suspect family. Even if he figures out something's missing, Lauren will convince him he just misplaced stuff. You know how old people get about their memory. Lauren made a sound like she'd been physically struck, her husband's voice discussing how to use her trust to cover his theft of her father. "Trust me, by Thursday we'll be clear. I'll tell Lauren we got a job offer in another state. Something urgent. We'll be gone before the old man knows what hit him." I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. Lauren stared at Charlie, tears streaming down her face. "Gambling debts?" she whispered. "You were going to rob my father?" "Lauren, listen to me. You called him a lonely old fool." Her voice broke. "You were going to steal from him and then disappear, taking me with you as your cover story." Charlie tried to step toward her, but she backed away like he was dangerous. "How much?" she demanded. "How much do you owe?" "It doesn't matter." "How much?" Charlie's shoulders sagged. 47,000. Lauren's legs seemed to give out. She sank against the doorframe, staring at the man she'd married. "You've been lying to me for months," she said. "About everything. The job loss, our finances, why we really needed to stay here. I was trying to protect you. By planning to rob my father?" Lauren's voice rose to a shout. "By using me as your alibi, while you destroyed the man who raised me?" Charlie tried once more. "Lauren, we can work this out." "No." Lauren straightened, and I saw steel enter her spine. "No, we can't. You planned to victimize my father. You called him names. You were going to let me believe he was losing his memory while you stole from him." She looked at Charlie with disgust. "Get out." "Lauren, get out of my father's house. Now." For the first time since I'd known him, Charlie had nothing to say. Charlie stood there for another 10 seconds, glitter still falling from his hair like tarnished snow. Then something in Lauren's expression, pure protective fury, finally convinced him that his marriage was over. "This isn't finished," he said, his voice turning ugly. "Half of everything we own is mine. I'll get my share." "You mean half of our debt?" Lauren's voice was ice cold. "Because that's all we have, Charlie. Debt. Gambling debt that I knew nothing about. I'll fight you in court." "With what money?" Lauren stepped closer to him, and I was proud to see she wasn't backing down. "You just admitted you owe $47,000 to dangerous people. What exactly are you going to fight me with?" Charlie's bravado crumbled. He looked at me with something approaching hatred. "This is your fault, old man. You turned her against me." "No," Lauren said firmly. "You did that yourself. When you decided to plan a robbery instead of asking for help? When you called my father names? When you lied to me for months? Charlie tried one last desperate approach. Lauren, we're married. We took vows. You broke those vows when you planned to commit a felony against my family. Lauren pointed toward the door. Get your things and get out. Now. I watched Charlie realize that his con was truly over. No more manipulation, no more lies, no more playing the victim. Lauren had heard his own words condemn him. He left the room without another word, tracking glitter through my house like a trail of evidence. We could hear him in the guest room, throwing clothes into bags with bitter violence. Lauren sank into my bedside chair, looking exhausted. Dad, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I brought him into your home. I put you in danger. Sweetheart, you couldn't have known. I should have seen the signs, the phone calls, the way he asked questions about your money. She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. How long have you known? Since the night before last. I heard that phone call and knew I had to protect both of us. Lauren managed a weak smile. The glitter bomb was genius. I wanted him caught red-handed, or should I say glitter-handed. That earned me a genuine laugh, even through her tears. Charlie reappeared in the doorway with 2 hastily packed bags, still sparkling like a defeated party favor. Lauren, leave your key on the kitchen counter, she said without looking at him. Don't contact me. My lawyer will contact yours. Charlie opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to realize the futility. He walked away, and a minute later we heard the front door slam. Lauren and I sat in silence for a few moments, listening to Charlie's car start and drive away into the night. Can I stay here? Lauren asked quietly, just until I figure things out. Sweetheart, this is your home for as long as you want it. 3 months later, I was making coffee when Lauren came downstairs, dressed for her new job at the local library. She'd taken to morning routines with the same methodical precision I'd always admired. Morning, Dad. Morning, sweetheart. Sleep well? Like a baby. She poured herself coffee and settled at the kitchen table. Any regrets about the great glitter trap of March? I chuckled. Only that I didn't film his face when it exploded. Lauren's divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Charlie had contested nothing. Hard to argue property division when you're facing potential criminal charges and $47,000 in gambling debt. Library busy today? I asked. Story time at 10, then I'm helping Mrs. Patterson research her genealogy? Lauren smiled. I love it there. Quiet, peaceful, full of people who actually appreciate books. She paused at the door. Thank you, Dad, for protecting me, for handling everything so elegantly. Thank you for trusting me when it mattered most. After she left, I sat in my kitchen, sipping coffee and reading the newspaper. The house felt peaceful in a way it hadn't for months. No tension, no lies, no one calculating how to exploit my kindness. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Forgot to mention, Mrs. Henderson asked if you'd help her install a security system. Apparently word got around about your innovative home protection methods. I laughed out loud. Maybe I should patent the confetti bomb approach to home security. Outside, spring was settling over Coeur d'Alene. My neighborhood remained quiet and safe, just as it had been before Charlie's brief invasion of our lives. Sometimes justice comes from courtrooms and police. Sometimes it comes from trusting your instincts, setting careful traps, and letting people reveal their true natures. And sometimes justice sparkles. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching. When I was buying a birthday present for my daughter, the cashier suddenly grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't go to the party under any circumstances." I thought he was crazy and brushed it off because it was a family celebration. Where would there be any betrayal? But ignoring the warning led to terrible consequences. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The book slipped from my fingers when the phone buzzed. Logistics management in the digital age hit the hardwood floor with a dull thud, pages splaying open like broken wings. I'd been reading the same paragraph 3 times anyway, my mind wandering to the gray expanse of Lake Michigan stretching endlessly beyond my 47th floor window. Another buzz, then another. Probably another telemarketer, I muttered, adjusting my worn blue sweater and reaching for my reading glasses hanging around my neck. The afternoon light streamed across my leather armchair, casting long shadows in the apartment that had become both sanctuary and prison since Margaret's death. The phone screen lit up. Cecilia. My heart stuttered. The device trembled in my weathered hands as I stared at her name, a name I hadn't seen on my phone for exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Not that I was counting. I opened the message with shaking fingers. Dad, I know a lot has happened between us, but it's my birthday this Saturday at 7 p.m. I'd love for you to come. Address, 425 Oak Street, Evanston. Love you, Cecilia. I read it twice, then a third time. Love you, Cecilia. The words blurred as memories crashed over me like Lake Michigan waves during a winter storm. Our last conversation echoed in my mind, her voice sharp with accusation, mine defensive and wounded. You don't understand what it's like, Dad. Luke lost everything in the business collapse. We're drowning here, and you're sitting on Mom's life insurance like it's some sacred trust fund. Your mother wanted that money for emergencies, not to bail out Luke's poor decisions. Mom would want us to help family, but you've always been selfish. That's why she worked herself to death, while you focused on your precious logistics career. The conversation had ended with a door slamming and 2 years of silence. I stood abruptly, the reading glasses swinging on their chain. My bare feet felt cold against the hardwood as I paced to the wall of family photos, our life in frames. Margaret in her wedding dress, radiant and hopeful. Cecilia at 8, gap-toothed and grinning at her first piano recital. Luke and Cecilia's wedding day, when I'd still believed he was good enough for my daughter. The phone felt heavy in my palm as I studied Cecilia's message again. October 25th, her birthday was tomorrow. October 26th. How had 2 years passed so quickly? 2 years of silence and now suddenly an invitation, I whispered to the empty apartment. What's changed? I touched the frame holding Cecilia's piano recital photo. She'd worn a blue dress that day, had practiced Chopin's Minute Waltz for months. After her performance, she'd run straight to me, ignoring the other parents' congratulations, and thrown her arms around my waist. Did you hear, Daddy? I didn't make any mistakes. You were perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect. Now she was 38, a mother herself. Time had carved lines I'd never seen around her eyes, created distance I'd never intended. The phone buzzed again, probably another text, but I didn't look. Instead, I stared at that little girl in the blue dress, frozen forever in a moment when I was still her hero, when love was simple and unconditional. The autumn light was fading, turning the lake a deeper gray. Somewhere in Evanston, my daughter was planning a birthday party. Somewhere in my chest, hope and suspicion warred, like opposing forces, neither willing to surrender completely. I clutched the phone tighter, my knuckles white against the black case, and wondered what had really prompted her to break 2 years of silence. I moved away from the photos, the phone still warm in my grip. 3 o'clock. The numbers on the cable box glowed accusingly as I walked past my desk toward the wall safe, hidden behind my collection of business journals. My fingers found the familiar combination, Margaret's birthday, and the metal door swung open with a soft click. Inside, beneath important documents and Margaret's jewelry, lay the lottery ticket, still crisp after 3 months, the numbers printed in that distinctive blue ink. 7/14/23/31/42, Powerball 18, $2 million after taxes. My retirement had just become very comfortable. I pulled out the ticket and a photo tucked behind it. Myself at the Bellagio gift shop in Las Vegas, tired after a long day of logistics conferences. The cashier had been young, bored, checking her phone between customers. I'd bought water and, on impulse, 5 lottery tickets from the machine near the register. Feeling lucky today? She'd asked without looking up. Just thirsty, I'd replied, pocketing the tickets and forgetting about them for weeks. 3 months ago, I'd finally remembered to check those crumpled papers buried in my travel bag. 4 losers and 1 life changer. The moment my laptop screen confirmed the numbers, I'd sat in stunned silence for 20 minutes, wondering if Margaret could see me from wherever she'd gone. I closed the safe and returned to my armchair, studying the ticket. The win hadn't been secret long. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had sharp eyes and loose lips. She'd spotted the lottery officials' business cards on my door when they'd come for verification photos. "Preston, heard you got lucky with those tickets. Congratulations," she'd chirp the next morning, her voice carrying down the hallway to anyone within earshot. Word spread through the building like smoke. Then to Margaret's old bridge club. Then who knows where else? In a city of millions, news about windfall money somehow finds its way to exactly the wrong ears. I leaned back in the chair, eyes closed, the ticket resting on my chest. 3 months since the win became public knowledge. 3 months, and now this invitation from Cecilia. The timing felt sharp as a blade against my throat. Of course someone could have talked, I murmured to the empty room, but could Cecilia have found out? My analytical mind, the same one that had optimized supply chains for 30 years, began connecting dots. Luke's financial troubles. Cecilia's pride preventing her from asking for help directly. A daughter who'd inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's stubborn streak, but also a daughter who'd once cried over injured birds, who'd saved her allowance to buy Christmas presents for strangers. The same girl who'd called me every Sunday during college, who'd asked my advice about everything from career choices to cake recipes. Traffic hummed 47 floors below. The lake darkened as clouds gathered, promising rain. I opened my eyes and studied Cecilia's message once more, searching for hidden meanings in simple words. "Love you, Cecilia." When had she last said those words? When had I last said them back? The questions hung in the air like dust motes, visible but untouchable. My chest tightened with something between hope and dread, the uncomfortable feeling of standing at a crossroads where both paths led into fog. I folded the lottery ticket carefully, creasing the edges with precise movements. Tomorrow was her birthday. 38 years since Margaret had placed that red, screaming bundle in my arms and whispered, "She's perfect, Preston. She's absolutely perfect." Maybe she still was. Maybe I was just a bitter old man seeing schemes where only reconciliation lived. Maybe my daughter simply missed her father and wanted him at her birthday party. The phone buzzed again. This time I didn't look. Instead, I closed my eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to trust completely, to love without conditions or calculations. I opened my eyes with deliberate force, pushing away the creeping doubts like cobwebs from a forgotten corner. "No," I said aloud to the empty apartment, my voice stronger than I'd expected. "I can't think like this about my own daughter. Maybe she really missed me. Maybe motherhood changed her perspective." Standing up from the chair, I felt energy returning to limbs that had grown heavy with suspicion. The lottery ticket crinkled as I placed it back in the safe, sealing away both the money and my paranoid thoughts about it. 3 quick steps took me to the kitchen where Margaret's old calendar still hung on the wall, a stubborn reminder of routine I couldn't bear to remove. I grabbed the red marker from the counter and circled Saturday's date with bold strokes. October 26th, Cecilia's 38th birthday. "Time flies," I muttered, capping the marker. "I need to try to rebuild this relationship." My home office occupied the corner where morning light usually pooled, though now the afternoon shadows stretched long across my mahogany desk. I settled into the chair and pulled out a yellow notepad, the same kind I'd used for logistics planning for decades. At the top, I wrote, "Gift ideas for Cecilia," in my careful engineer's handwriting. What did I know about her now? Mother of 2 children whose names I barely remembered. Marketing professional. Lover of good wine, if memory served. But what about her deeper interests? What made her smile the way she had as a child? My pen hovered over the paper as memories surfaced. Cecilia at 8, practicing piano with fierce concentration. Her small fingers stretching for octaves she couldn't quite reach, determined to master pieces meant for bigger hands. She'd loved jewelry too, had raided Margaret's jewelry box for dress-up games, draping herself in pearls and clip-on earrings while performing elaborate tea parties. Jewelry, I wrote, piano music books, family photos in nice frames. The jewelry idea felt right, something substantial, meaningful, a statement that said I valued her, that I wanted to invest in our relationship's future. The Magnificent Mile shopping district was only a 15-minute taxi ride. I could find something beautiful at Tiffany's or Cartier, something worthy of the woman she'd become. I picked up the framed photo from my desk. Cecilia, at her first piano recital, wearing that blue dress with white lace collar. Margaret had sewn it herself, working late into the evening for weeks, creating something special for our daughter's big moment. Cecilia had been nervous that morning, her small hands shaking as she practiced scales. "What if I forget the notes, Daddy?" she'd whispered while I adjusted her hair ribbon. "Then you'll remember them again," I'd said. "Music doesn't disappear, sweetheart. It's always inside you, waiting." She'd played Chopin's Minute Waltz flawlessly that day. When the final notes faded, she'd look directly at me in the audience, her face glowing with pride and relief. Then she'd run to me afterward, her dress flying, and thrown herself into my arms. "Did you hear, Daddy? I didn't make any mistakes." "You were perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect." I traced the photo's edge with my finger, feeling the weight of lost years. What recitals had I missed? What achievements had gone uncelebrated? What fears had gone uncomforted because of pride and stubbornness on both sides? Tomorrow I would shop for jewelry. Something elegant, timeless, perhaps pearls like the ones she'd admired in Margaret's collection. I would wrap it carefully, write a heartfelt card, and attend her party with an open heart. I would hug my grandchildren whose faces I barely knew and try to repair what time and hurt had damaged. The apartment felt warmer suddenly, as if hope had its own temperature. Outside, the first drops of rain began spattering the windows, but inside I felt lighter than I had in months. My daughter had reached out across 2 years of silence. She'd used the word love. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it was everything. I looked at Cecilia's childhood photo one more time, memorizing her gap-toothed smile, her eager eyes, her absolute trust in the world's goodness. Tomorrow I would try to be worthy of that trust again. Tomorrow I would remember how to be her father instead of her critic. The rain picked up outside, drumming against the glass like applause, and I began planning my approach to winning back my daughter's heart. The drive to Magnificent Mile took 30 minutes through Saturday afternoon traffic, Chicago's streets bustling with weekend shoppers and tourists. I'd chosen my best navy blazer and gray slacks, the outfit Margaret used to call my important business look. The parking garage beneath Water Tower Place charged $25 for 2 hours, but today money felt inconsequential compared to the mission ahead. Treasured Moments occupied a prime corner location, its gleaming windows displaying artfully arranged luxury goods under soft spotlighting. Classical music drifted from hidden speakers as I pushed through the heavy glass door, breathing in the scent of leather and expensive perfume. Other customers moved quietly through the spacious interior, speaking in hushed tones appropriate for a place where price tags carried multiple zeros. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across marble countertops, while well-dressed sales associates glided between displays like dancers following choreography. Everything here whispered exclusivity, from the thick carpet beneath my feet to the silk-wrapped gift boxes stacked behind the main counter. I wandered first through the personalized gifts section, monogrammed leather portfolios, engraved crystal paperweights, custom photo frames, too impersonal for a reconciliation gift. The home D.Core area offered beautiful vases and decorative sculptures, but nothing felt right for Cecilia's personality. What did 38-year-old marketing professionals want these days? The jewelry counter drew me like gravity. Diamonds sparkled under halogen lights, their facets throwing tiny rainbows across black velvet display cushions. Necklaces, bracelets, rings, and earrings arranged in careful rows, each piece more elegant than the last. This felt right. Something precious, lasting, beautiful enough to match the daughter I remembered. "May I help you find something special?" A woman approached with practiced grace, her silver hair pulled into an elegant chignon. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salaries, and her smile held the perfect balance of warmth and professional distance. "I need a gift for my daughter," I explained, suddenly feeling underdressed despite my best blazer. "Her 38th birthday. We haven't spoken in some time. I want something meaningful." Her expression softened with understanding. "Reconciliation gifts require special consideration. What are her preferences? Conservative or contemporary? Gold or silver? Diamonds or colored stones? She always loved sparkling things as a child, I said, remembering 8-year-old Cecilia, draped in Margaret's costume jewelry. Diamonds, I think. Something elegant but not too flashy. She guided me to a display case filled with diamond earrings. These are very popular for milestone birthdays, classic styles that never go out of fashion. My eyes settled on a pair of stud earrings, each centered with a brilliant cut diamond surrounded by smaller stones, in a delicate halo setting. They caught the light beautifully, sophisticated enough for a professional woman, yet timeless enough to suit any occasion. Tell me about these, I said, pointing to the pair that had captured my attention. Excellent choice, sir. 1 carat total weight. VS1 grade diamonds. Very high quality. The setting is platinum, which won't tarnish or discolor. These earrings could easily become family heirlooms. She removed them from the case with practiced care, placing them on a small velvet tray for closer inspection. The diamonds threw light like captured stars, beautiful enough to make Cecilia's eyes shine the way they had during her piano recital all those years ago. She always loved sparkling things, I repeated softly, imagining Cecilia opening the gift box, seeing these earrings for the first time. I'll take them. This is an excellent choice, sir. VS1 grade diamonds, very high quality. The price tag read $3,500, more than I'd spent on jewelry since Margaret's engagement ring 39 years ago. But money seemed meaningless compared to the possibility of seeing joy on my daughter's face again. Maybe this would help show that I'd forgiven everything from the past. Would you like special gift wrapping? The associate asked. We have beautiful presentation boxes. I nodded, watching her select an elegant navy box with gold trim. The earrings nestled perfectly in white silk padding, looking like tiny treasures worthy of a princess. This gift might bridge the gap between who we'd been and who we could become again. Walking toward the cash register, I felt lighter than I had in months. Tonight I would call Cecilia to confirm tomorrow's party attendance. Tomorrow I would hand her this beautiful gift and watch her face light up with surprise and happiness. The cash register stood like an altar at the front of the store, its screen glowing softly as I approached with the jewelry box tucked securely under my arm. Behind the counter, a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes was just settling into his position, adjusting his name tag and checking the register's receipt paper. Good afternoon, he said automatically, then glanced up with the practiced smile of someone who'd worked retail longer than he'd planned. Find everything you needed? Yes, these earrings. I set the elegant navy box on the marble counter, feeling satisfied with my choice. Cecilia would love them, I was certain. Beautiful store you have here. Thank you, sir. He picked up the box and scanned the barcode on the bottom, his movements efficient but weary. Special occasion? My daughter's birthday. She's turning 38 tomorrow. Pride crept into my voice despite the complicated circumstances. Haven't seen her in a while, so I wanted something meaningful. The man nodded absently, focused on his screen. That'll be $3,700 with tax. Will that be cash, or... He stopped mid-sentence as I handed him my credit card, his eyes fixed on the name embossed in silver letters. Preston M. Hunt. Something shifted in his expression. The professional pleasantness evaporated, replaced by recognition that made his jaw tighten. His hands stilled on the card, and when he looked up at me again, his eyes held an intensity that made me step back instinctively. Listen, sir. His voice dropped to an urgent whisper as he leaned across the counter. Preston Hunt, right? Under no circumstances should you go to that party. Excuse me. I blinked, certain I'd misheard him. What are you talking about? His grip tightened on my credit card, and suddenly his hand shot out to grab my wrist across the counter. His fingers were stronger than they looked, calloused from years of physical work that didn't match his current retail position. Just trust me. Don't go. I jerked my hand back, stepping away from the counter. Young man, give me back my card. My voice carried the authority I'd once used with subordinates, who'd overstepped their bounds, but he didn't release his grip on my wrist. Please, I'm not crazy. There's something you need to know. Just complete the transaction. I pulled harder, finally freeing my arm from his surprisingly strong grasp. Other customers were beginning to stare, their quiet conversations stopping as they sensed the tension. His eyes darted around the store, probably calculating whether his manager was within earshot. When he spoke again, desperation leaked through his professional facade. Look, I work here part-time. It used to be my field before everything went wrong. I'm not some random lunatic, okay? I know things. What things? I demanded, though every instinct screamed at me to grab my card and leave immediately. Just, please don't go to that party. Whatever they've told you, whatever they've promised. He shook his head, running the credit card through the machine with trembling fingers. It's not what it seems. The machine beeped, requesting my signature on the small screen. I signed quickly, wanting nothing more than to escape this increasingly bizarre interaction. The man, his name tag read, Mark Wilson, printed my receipt with mechanical precision while his eyes remained fixed on my face. Here's your card, sir. He held it out, but when I reached for it, he didn't immediately let go. Please, just stay home tomorrow. I snatched the card from his grip and grabbed the jewelry box. Thank you for your concern, I said stiffly, backing toward the door. But I think you've confused me with someone else. I haven't, he called after me, his voice carrying across the store despite his attempt to keep quiet. Other customers were openly staring now, probably wondering if they were witnessing a robbery or mental breakdown. Preston Hunt from the Loop. I know exactly who you are. The heavy glass door couldn't close behind me fast enough. I strode quickly toward the parking garage, the jewelry box clutched against my chest like protective armor. Behind me, through the store windows, I could see Mark Wilson watching my retreat, with obvious distress etched across his features. What kind of place was this? How did a random cashier know not only my full name but also where I lived? The encounter left me feeling exposed, as if I'd wandered into someone else's nightmare by mistake. The late afternoon air felt cold against my flushed face as I hurried toward my car, the jewelry box secure in my grip, but my mind reeling from the bizarre encounter. Other shoppers moved past me with normal Saturday concerns, arms full of purchases, children tugging at coats, couples debating dinner plans, while I felt like I'd stepped through some invisible barrier into unreality. How did he know my full name? The credit card displayed only P.M. Hunt in small letters, yet Mark Wilson had addressed me as Preston Hunt from the Loop with unsettling certainty. His desperation had felt genuine, not the calculated manipulation of a con artist or the rambling confusion of mental illness. Traffic on Michigan Avenue moved in fits and starts as I navigated toward the I-90 entrance ramp. Saturday evening brought out families heading to restaurants, couples dressed for theater shows, tourists clutching shopping bags and consulting phone maps, normal people living normal lives, while I sat trapped behind red lights, trying to make sense of a stranger's urgent warning. Under no circumstances should you go to that party. The words echoed in my memory with uncomfortable persistence. Mark's eyes had held real fear, not the vacant stare of delusion. Whatever he knew, or thought he knew, had genuinely terrified him. But how could he possibly know anything about Cecilia's birthday party? The invitation had come yesterday, less than 24 hours ago. Unless... I drummed my fingers against the steering wheel, fighting against paranoid thoughts that felt too much like the suspicions I deliberately abandoned yesterday. The logical explanations were obvious. Mark Wilson could have seen my name clearly when he processed the credit card transaction. He could have a history of strange behavior with customers. Retail work attracted all kinds of people, including those dealing with personal problems that affected their professional interactions. The traffic light finally changed, and I merged onto I-90 West toward the Loop. The evening sky was darkening, painted in shades of gray that matched Lake Michigan's choppy surface. Chicago's skyline rose ahead like a familiar promise of home and safety, yet something nagged at the edges of my consciousness. 25 minutes later, I parked in my building's garage and took the elevator to the 47th floor, the jewelry box still warm from my protective grip. My apartment welcomed me with its familiar silence. No random strangers grabbing my wrist. No desperate warnings about parties I shouldn't attend. I set the gift bag on my kitchen counter and paced to the living room windows. The city spread below in its usual pattern of lights and movement, indifferent to whatever drama had played out in a magnificent mile gift shop. Everything looked normal from up here, rational, controllable. Ridiculous, I said aloud to my reflection in the darkening window. Just a coincidence. But coincidences felt increasingly uncomfortable lately. First, Cecilia's invitation arriving 3 months after news of my lottery win became public. Now a stranger who somehow knew details about my life, warning me against attending her party. The logical part of my mind, the same analytical thinking that had built a successful career, began connecting dots I didn't want to see. I walked back to the kitchen and stared at the jewelry box sitting innocently on the granite counter. $3,700 worth of hope and reconciliation, chosen with such care to bridge 2 years of hurt. Tomorrow evening I would drive to Evanston, ring Cecilia's doorbell, and hand her this beautiful gift while watching her face light up with surprise and joy. The way he grabbed my wrist, like he was desperate to warn me about something. I closed my eyes and leaned against the counter, feeling the weight of conflicting emotions. Trust or suspicion, hope or cynicism, love or fear. 2 years ago, I'd chosen pride and lost my daughter. Yesterday, I'd chosen hope and planned reconciliation. Today, a stranger had chosen desperation and planted seeds of doubt I couldn't quite dismiss. Outside, Chicago continued its Saturday evening rhythm, oblivious to the turmoil in apartment 4712. Tomorrow would bring answers, one way or another. Tomorrow I would discover whether Mark Wilson was a concerned stranger, a disturbed individual, or something else entirely. The jewelry box caught the overhead light, its navy surface gleaming with promise and possibility, while questions I couldn't answer multiplied like shadows in the approaching darkness. Enough. This is my daughter's birthday. I'm just going to enjoy the evening. The decision crystallized in my mind like ice forming on a winter lake, sudden, complete, unbreakable. I pushed away from the kitchen counter and grabbed the gift bag with renewed determination. Mark Wilson was clearly a troubled individual, perhaps dealing with mental health issues that made him fixate on random customers. I wouldn't let his paranoid fantasies poison what could be the most important night of my relationship with Cecilia. My bedroom mirror reflected a man who'd aged more than I cared to admit, but tonight called for dignity. I selected my finest navy suit, the one Margaret had helped me choose for our anniversary dinner 3 years ago, and paired it with the silver tie that brought out my eyes. The shower's hot water washed away the day's accumulated tension, and I emerged feeling renewed, purposeful. "Preston, you're a father," I said to my reflection while adjusting the tie knot. "Act accordingly." The drive to Evanston took me north along Lakeshore Drive before connecting to I-94, Chicago's familiar skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror as suburban neighborhoods replaced urban density. Classical music filled the car, Chopin, the same composer Cecilia had played during her childhood recital. The irony wasn't lost on me. Maybe we can finally talk like adults. Maybe I can meet my grandchildren properly, learn their middle names, discover their favorite books and games. 2 years was a lifetime in child development. They'd grown and changed while I'd nursed wounded pride in my lonely apartment. Evanston's tree-lined streets welcomed me with the comfortable prosperity of established families. Mature oak trees displayed autumn's full palette, burgundy, gold, deep orange, while well-maintained Victorian and colonial homes sat behind manicured lawns, like witnesses to generations of family celebrations. This was the neighborhood where successful professionals raised children who attended good schools and learned piano on Saturday afternoons. 55 Oak Street stood out even among its impressive neighbors. The colonial revival architecture featured classic proportions and elegant detailing, from the wraparound porch with its white columns to the dormered roof that suggested spacious bedrooms above. Warm light spilled from tall windows, and I could hear the gentle murmur of conversation mixed with soft jazz music drifting from inside. Other guests were arriving as I parked across the street. A couple in their 40s climbed the front steps carrying a wrapped gift and bottle of wine. An older woman emerged from a BMW with what appeared to be a homemade cake in a glass carrier. Normal people attending a normal birthday party for their friend, neighbor, or colleague. I checked my appearance one final time in the visor mirror, smoothed my silver hair, and took the jewelry gift bag from the passenger seat. The diamond earrings inside represented more than expensive jewelry. They symbolized my commitment to rebuilding our relationship, my willingness to invest in Cecilia's happiness, despite past hurt. 38 years old, I murmured, walking toward the front porch. Where did the time go? The house felt alive with celebration as I approached. Through the large front windows, I caught glimpses of elegantly dressed people holding wine glasses, gesturing animatedly in conversation. Cecilia moved among them like a graceful hostess, her dark hair styled in an elegant updo that reminded me painfully of Margaret during our early marriage years. Standing at the heavy oak door, I could hear my daughter's laughter rising above the general conversation. Genuine, joyful, unguarded, in a way I hadn't heard since she was young. My heart tightened with anticipation and something approaching prayer. Let this be real. Let her invitation come from love, not calculation. Let tonight mark a new beginning for our fractured family. I raised my hand toward the brass doorbell, feeling the weight of the gift bag in my other hand, and prepared to step back into my daughter's life. The doorbell's chime echoed through the house, followed by footsteps approaching from inside. When the door swung open, Cecilia stood framed in warm light, her face transforming with what appeared to be genuine delight. "Dad, I'm so glad you came." She stepped forward immediately, wrapping me in an embrace that felt both familiar and foreign after 2 years of separation. Her perfume carried hints of jasmine and vanilla, sophisticated, expensive, nothing like the fruity body sprays she'd favored as a teenager. "Happy birthday, dear. You look wonderful." The words came easily, truthfully. Cecilia had grown into the kind of elegant woman Margaret would have been proud to see. Her black dress sophisticated without being flashy, her jewelry understated but clearly quality. She gestured me inside, taking my coat with practiced hostess grace. "Thank you for coming. I know it's been difficult between us." Her voice carried a slight tremor that could have been nervousness or emotion, but I'm really hoping we can move forward. The house's interior matched its promising exterior. Cream-colored furniture arranged around a marble fireplace, fresh flowers in crystal vases, artwork that suggested both taste and financial comfort. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers, while approximately 15 guests mingled with the easy familiarity of established friendships. "Preston!" Luke appeared at my elbow, his smile warm and seemingly genuine. "Great to see you again. Thanks for coming. It means the world to Cecilia." He'd aged well, still handsome in that polished way that had initially impressed me when they'd started dating. His handshake was firm, his eye contact steady. Before I could respond fully, small voices called out from across the room. "Grandpa! Grandpa's here!" 2 children rushed toward me with the uninhibited enthusiasm only the very young possess. The boy looked about 7, with Cecilia's dark hair and serious eyes. The girl, perhaps 5, had Luke's lighter coloring and a gap-toothed grin that transported me instantly to Cecilia's childhood. "Look what I drew for you, Grandpa!" The boy thrust a crayon masterpiece into my hands, a house by what appeared to be a lake, with stick figures labeled Grandpa and me, standing on what might have been a dock. "That's your house by the water. Mommy told me you live way up high." "It's beautiful, Thomas." His name came back to me suddenly, along with his sister's. "And Emma, how tall you've gotten." Emma beamed and grabbed my free hand. "Will you read me a story later? I have a new book about dragons." Her small fingers felt warm and trusting, completely innocent of adult complexities and past grievances. The evening flowed with unexpected ease. Guests introduced themselves, neighbors, Cecilia's marketing colleagues, family friends whose names I half remembered from years past. Everyone seemed genuinely pleased to meet me, offering compliments about what a thoughtful father I must be to maintain such a close relationship with my daughter. I accepted their assumptions without correction, feeling both grateful and slightly guilty. At 8:15, Cecilia called for attention. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming to celebrate with me tonight. Birthdays become more meaningful as we get older. They're opportunities to appreciate the people who matter most." Her eyes found mine across the room. "Dad, I believe you have something for me?" The moment felt theatrical, yet sincere as I approached with the jewelry bag. The room quieted except for the soft background music, all attention focused on this father-daughter reunion. Cecilia's hands shook slightly as she unwrapped the navy box, her expression shifting from anticipation to genuine amazement when she revealed the diamond earrings. "Dad, these are incredibly beautiful. Thank you." Her voice caught with what sounded like real emotion. "Everyone, look at these gorgeous earrings my father chose for me." The guests responded with appropriate admiration and approval. "What a thoughtful father! Those are absolutely stunning. Such exquisite taste." Their words washed over me like validation, confirming that I'd chosen well, that this gesture would indeed help repair our relationship. Cecilia fastened the earrings immediately, tilting her head to catch the light as the diamonds sparkled against her dark hair. She looked radiant, successful, happy, everything a father could want for his daughter. The sight filled me with profound satisfaction and something approaching peace. By 8:30, I found myself completely absorbed in animated conversation with a couple who owned a successful consulting firm. The wine had loosened my tongue pleasantly, and for the first time in months, I felt truly relaxed and content. The evening was exceeding my most optimistic expectations. "Excuse me," I said, setting down my empty glass. "I should get some water before I embarrass myself completely." Making my way toward what I assumed was the kitchen, I felt lighter than I had in years. Mark Wilson's paranoid warning seemed like a distant memory from someone else's nightmare. This was reality. Family, reconciliation, grandchildren who drew pictures of visiting Grandpa's lake house. The kitchen lay beyond an archway at the house's rear, modern appliances gleaming under recessed lighting. I moved through Cecilia's home with the easy familiarity of someone who finally felt welcome. No longer a guest, but family returning where he belonged. The refrigerator hummed quietly beside granite countertops that probably cost more than most people's cars. But tonight, such details only reinforced my pride in my daughter's success. Water glasses sat in neat rows beside the sink. I reached for one, already planning my return to the living room, where Emma had promised to show me her dragon book. The evening stretched ahead with pleasant possibilities. More stories from the grandchildren, deeper conversation with Cecilia, perhaps even a private moment to discuss the future of our relationship. Voices drifted from the open French doors leading to the terrace. Male laughter, the clink of beer bottles, casual conversation among friends stepping outside for fresh air. I paid little attention initially, focused on running cold water and enjoying the warm satisfaction that comes from successful family reconciliation. Then I heard the words that changed everything. "The old man doesn't even suspect. 2 million, guys." Cecilia already prepared the family fund documents. My hand froze on the faucet handle. The water glass trembled in my grip as Luke's voice carried clearly through the open doors, his words slightly slurred but unmistakably coherent. "And he'll sign?" another voice asked with casual interest. "Of course. He's so happy about the reconciliation, he'll sign anything. Says he wants to provide for the grandkids' future." Luke's laugh held cruel amusement. "The stupid old fool actually bought expensive jewelry. Makes this even easier. Proves he's emotionally invested." The glass slipped from my numb fingers, shattering against the granite in an explosion of crystal fragments that seemed to echo through my chest. But the men outside continued their conversation, oblivious to the destruction their words were causing. "Smart plan," the second voice continued approvingly. "And when does this happen?" "Tonight. Cecilia has everything prepared. Legal documents establishing a family educational fund for the grandchildren. Very official, very legitimate sounding. He'll think he's being a responsible grandfather." "What about the other family members? Won't they question sudden transfers?" Luke's response came with the confidence of someone who'd considered every angle. "There are no other family members. His wife died 2 years ago. Cecilia's an only child. Once he signs, the money transfers into an account we control jointly. By the time he realizes what happened, if he ever does, it'll be too late legally." I stood paralyzed in the kitchen doorway, pieces of broken glass at my feet like fragments of my shattered trust. Mark Wilson's desperate warning echoed in my memory. Under no circumstances should you go to that party. He'd known. Somehow, impossibly, he'd known exactly what was planned for tonight. The children's drawings, Cecilia's tears of joy, the expensive earrings sparkling in her dark hair, all of it calculated theater, designed to manipulate an old man's desperate longing for family connection. Even the grandchildren had been coached, their innocent artwork and requests for stories weaponized against their grandfather's emotions. The best part is how grateful he'll be, Luke continued, his voice growing more animated with alcohol and anticipated success. He thinks this is about love and reconciliation. Doesn't realize we've been planning this since the lottery win became public knowledge 3 months ago. 3 months. They'd been watching, waiting, planning while I'd mourned our estrangement and hoped for healing. Every detail of tonight's celebration had been choreographed to exploit my paternal instincts and guilt about the lost years. My legs felt unsteady as the full scope of their deception became clear. Cecilia's nervous excitement hadn't been about seeing her father again. It had been anticipation of their plan's success. The beautiful house, the elegant guests, even Thomas's crayon drawing of visiting Grandpa's house, all props in an elaborate confidence game. I backed away from the kitchen carefully, my dress shoes crunching softly on broken glass, my mind racing through implications and possibilities. In the living room, Cecilia would be waiting with documents ready for my signature, playing the loving daughter role to perfection while counting down to the moment when she could steal $2 million from the man who'd raised her, loved her, grieved their separation for 2 painful years. The party continued around me, guests laughing and chatting while my world collapsed in silent devastation. I forced my face into neutral expressions, nodding appropriately at nearby conversations while calculating how to extract myself from this nightmare without revealing what I'd discovered. Across the room, Cecilia caught my eye and smiled, the same radiant expression that had welcomed me at the door, now revealed as the practiced deception of a skilled performer preparing for her final scene. Returning to the living room required every ounce of self-control I'd developed during 30 years of managing difficult business negotiations. My face remained pleasant, interested, fatherly, a masterpiece of deception that would have impressed even Cecilia if she'd known how much effort it demanded. The broken glass in the kitchen would remain undiscovered until morning, but the broken trust would last forever. "Dad, there you are!" Cecilia approached with a folder in her hands, her expression bright with calculated enthusiasm. "I wanted to talk to you about an idea I've been developing, a family investment fund for the grandchildren." "Tell me more, dear." The words emerged steady and curious, betraying nothing of the rage building like pressure behind a dam. I settled into the cream-colored armchair where I'd felt so welcomed an hour ago, back when I'd still believed my daughter loved me. She perched on the coffee table's edge, leaning forward with the practiced body language of a skilled salesperson. The diamond earrings caught the light as she tilted her head, those expensive symbols of paternal love now revealed as mere props in her performance. "This will secure their education and future," she continued, opening the folder to reveal official-looking documents, complete with letterhead and legal terminology. "Thomas and Emma deserve the best opportunities, and with your lottery winnings, we could establish something really meaningful for them." The papers looked legitimate, professional formatting, complex legal language, spaces marked clearly for signatures. How much time had they spent preparing this fraud? How many hours planning the perfect way to steal from the man who'd given Cecilia life, love, and every advantage he could provide? "Sounds interesting," I replied, accepting the documents with hands that remained perfectly steady despite the volcanic fury beneath my calm exterior. "Let me have some time to think this through." "Of course, Dad. Take all the time you need." Her smile held just the right mixture of hope and patience, as if she genuinely cared about my comfort with the decision, rather than manipulating me toward financial ruin. The cashier was right. What a naive fool I've been. I pretended to scan the legal text while my mind worked through different scenarios. Walking out immediately would accomplish nothing except alerting them to my knowledge. Confronting them publicly would create a scene that served no useful purpose. But there was another option, one that would turn their own manipulation against them with surgical precision. "This is quite comprehensive," I said, noting how Cecilia's posture shifted slightly forward, sensing success within reach. "Very thoughtful planning. You've obviously put considerable effort into the details." I wanted everything perfect for the family, she replied, and the irony of those words almost broke my composure. Family, the concept they'd prostituted for money, while I'd grieved our separation and hoped for reconciliation. Other guests continued their conversations around us, unaware that they were witnessing the final act of an elaborate betrayal. Luke remained outside with his drinking buddies, probably still bragging about his clever scheme to defraud the stupid old fool who'd raised his wife and provided for his family. "You know what?" I said, closing the folder and handing it back to her. "This deserves proper consideration. Could I have a few minutes to think privately? Perhaps upstairs." "Of course." Cecilia's enthusiasm barely contained her eagerness to close this deal. "The bathroom is at the top of the stairs. Second door on the right. Take all the time you need." Standing up required careful attention to balance and facial expression. Every muscle wanted to shake with rage, but business training held firm. I was Preston Hunt, successful logistics manager, analytical thinker, strategic planner. I would not give these thieves the satisfaction of seeing how deeply they'd wounded me. "Thank you, dear. This is exactly the kind of family investment that requires careful thought." As I walked toward the staircase, I caught Emma tugging at her mother's dress, probably wanting attention now that the important adult conversation had paused. Cecilia automatically reached down to pat her daughter's head, while keeping her eyes fixed on me, calculating how long this consideration might take before she could secure my signature. Climbing the stairs, I felt each step carrying me further from the naive father who'd entered this house 2 hours ago, and closer to the man who would teach these people the true cost of betraying family trust. The upstairs hallway stretched before me, carpeted in soft beige that muffled my footsteps as I located the bathroom Cecilia had mentioned. Voices from the party below provided perfect cover. Laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses creating a soundtrack of celebration while I prepared their destruction. Inside the bathroom, I locked the door and pulled out my phone, checking the time. 9:15 p.m. Cecilia would expect me back downstairs within 10 or 15 minutes, eager but not pushy about securing my signature. Perfect timing for what I had planned. A small notepad sat on the granite vanity beside expensive hand soaps and monogrammed towels. Another reminder of the comfortable life my daughter had built while plotting to steal from her father. I tore off a sheet and found a pen in my jacket pocket, the same one I'd used to sign credit card receipts when buying those diamond earrings. The note required careful crafting. Too emotional would seem unhinged. Too cold might not convey the appropriate level of devastation. I wanted surgical precision, words that would cut deep while demonstrating exactly how thoroughly I'd understood their game. First draft. "Thank you for the enlightening evening. Heard everything on the terrace. Will is being changed immediately." Too brief. This deserved more impact. Second attempt. "Cecilia, congratulations on your performance tonight. Oscar-worthy acting. Unfortunately, I overheard Luke's conversation about the stupid old fool and his $2 million. As of tomorrow, my will changes. Every cent goes to charity for orphaned children. Perhaps they will prove more grateful than my own daughter. Better, but still not perfect. The final version needed to twist the knife while maintaining dignity. I wrote carefully, "Cecilia, thank you for the wonderful evening. As of today, my will is changing. All funds will go to charity for orphan children. Perhaps they will prove more grateful children than my own daughter, your father, who will never trust you with another cent." The words looked stark on the white paper, but they captured everything. My knowledge of their deception, the poetic justice of giving money to real orphans instead of fake needy family, and the finality of our destroyed relationship. $2 million to help children who genuinely needed support, rather than funding the comfortable lifestyle of accomplished thieves. Folding the note precisely, I checked my watch again. Guests were moving back inside from the terrace. I could hear increased activity downstairs as people sought warmth and fresh drinks. Perfect timing for my exit strategy. The hallway remained empty as I descended quietly, listening to party sounds from the living room. Everyone seemed gathered there now, probably discussing weekend plans and sharing neighborhood gossip, while my daughter counted down to her anticipated windfall. I moved through the house like a ghost, placing the folded note prominently on the coffee table where Cecilia would see it immediately upon my return from consideration time. Then I retrieved my coat from the hall closet, grateful for every business trip that had taught me efficient, quiet movement through unfamiliar buildings. The front door opened silently while party noise masked any sound. I walked normally to my car, started the engine at regular volume, and pulled away from the curb at exactly the speed limit. Anyone watching would see a man leaving early from a family gathering, nothing unusual or suspicious. 2 blocks away, I finally allowed myself a smile. In approximately 10 minutes, Cecilia would discover that her elaborate fraud had collapsed spectacularly. She would call frantically, leave desperate voicemails, probably even show up at my apartment building, but I would never answer, never acknowledge, never give her another opportunity to manipulate paternal love for personal gain. The city lights blurred past as I drove toward downtown Chicago, feeling lighter despite the evening's emotional devastation. Mark Wilson had risked his job to warn a stranger about impending fraud. The least I could do was thank him properly and perhaps apologize for my initial dismissive reaction. My phone remained silent on the passenger seat, but I knew that would change very soon. Cecilia was about to discover that her father wasn't quite the naive fool she'd assumed, and her reaction would probably be spectacular. For the first time in hours, I felt genuinely curious about what would happen next. The drive back to Magnificent Mile took 40 minutes through Saturday night traffic. Chicago's streets alive with couples heading to late dinners and young people beginning their weekend adventures. My phone remained strategically silent on the passenger seat, though I caught glimpses of the screen lighting up repeatedly, calls I had no intention of answering. At a red light near Navy Pier, I finally checked the display. 12 missed calls from Cecilia, each one probably more frantic than the last. The note had clearly achieved its intended impact. I could almost picture her reading those words, realizing that her elaborate deception had crumbled in the space of a single folded piece of paper. Treasured moments. Stayed open until 11 on Saturdays, its windows still glowing warmly when I found parking near Water Tower Place. Most other shops were closing, their security gates rolling down over darkened storefronts, but the high-end gift store maintained extended hours for customers with flexible schedules and significant purchasing power. Mark Wilson was organizing inventory near the jewelry counter when I pushed through the glass doors. He looked up with surprise, then concern, probably wondering why the agitated customer from earlier was returning after normal business hours. "You were right," I said without preamble, approaching the counter where he stood with a clipboard of price tags. "I came to thank you and apologize for not listening." His expression shifted from wariness to something approaching relief. "What happened?" "I heard their plan a week ago at O'Malley's bar," he began, setting down his clipboard and leaning against the counter. "Luke was bragging to friends about how easy it would be to fool his rich father-in-law. Something about family fund documents and $2 million. I didn't know who you were until I saw your credit card." The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead while other late shoppers browsed quietly through the store's remaining open sections. Mark spoke in low tones, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd struggled with whether to interfere in a stranger's business. "Why did you risk telling me?" I asked, genuinely curious about his motivation. "I was cheated in business myself a few years ago," he replied, his fingers drumming nervously against the marble countertop. "Lost everything to a partner I trusted completely. I know how much it hurts when someone you trust betrays you for money. I couldn't stay silent and let it happen to someone else." His honesty hit deeper than expected. Here was a man who'd suffered his own financial devastation, reduced to working retail jobs to rebuild his life, yet still willing to risk his employment to help a complete stranger avoid similar pain. "What did you do tonight?" Mark asked. "Left them a note explaining that my will is changing. All funds go to charity for orphan children instead of fake needy family members." I smiled grimly. "Seems appropriate, don't you think?" Mark's laugh held genuine admiration. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Luke was so confident that you'd never suspect anything. Said you were desperate for family reconciliation." We stood quietly for a moment, 2 men who'd learned painful lessons about trust and deception, finding unexpected common ground in a Chicago gift shop after business hours. How about coffee tomorrow? I suggested, surprising myself with the spontaneous invitation. It seems I've found an honest person in this city, which feels increasingly rare. I'd like that, Mark replied, extending his hand across the counter. And Preston, I'm sorry about your daughter. That kind of betrayal, it changes everything. His handshake was firm, his eyes direct and genuine. Everything Cecilia's had not been tonight. Here was a man who'd lost financial security, but retained his integrity, who'd risked his job to help a stranger simply because it was the right thing to do. Thank you, Mark, for the warning, for caring enough to speak up, for being decent when everyone else was calculating personal advantage. I released his hand, but maintained eye contact. Tomorrow morning, Corner Caf, near my building. I'll text you the address. Walking toward my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the beginning of genuine friendship based on mutual respect, rather than family obligation or business necessity. Tonight had cost me a daughter, but might have gained me something more valuable. Proof that honorable people still existed, even in a world where family members schemed to steal from their own fathers. My phone buzzed again on the passenger seat as I started the engine. Cecilia, no doubt, still frantically trying to salvage her collapsed fraud, or perhaps genuinely panicked about losing her father's love along with his money. I left it unanswered and drove home through the glittering Chicago night, feeling genuinely optimistic for the first time in months. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.